Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Monday, April 21st. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 527 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. It is the second show of the day here on the program. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. If you missed it earlier today, we had my final New York Jets 7-round mock draft, as we are just 3 days away. So definitely check that out. And today, I want to get into some more Jets draft news. Darren Mougey spoke to the media earlier today. We'll get you some clips and some takeaways from his pre-draft press conference. And Adam Schefter released an article this morning with a lot of notes and rumors and news as we are 3 days away from the draft. And he threw some information on what the New York Jets could do at number 7, including a potential surprise pick for the Jets. So we'll break that down as well a little bit later on here in the podcast. As always, though, before we begin, we got to tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. If you want to get in on any of the sports betting action, NBA, NHL playoffs are in full swing. Of course, baseball season is in full swing. Check out BetUS. Use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. If you want to get the hottest tickets in sports or entertainment, check out SeatGeek and use my link in the description of this video to download the SeatGeek app. And at checkout, use promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek and get yourself out to some awesome events. And of course, our friends over at Huga House. If you want any of their new arrivals or original collections, check them out. Use code BUBS for 15% off any purchase and get yourself some awesome Huga House swag. So here we go. Second show of the day, episode 527. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. The support much appreciated, as always, here on the program. Today, I wanted to break down Darren Mougey's comments and then get into an Adam Schefter article that he released this morning with a lot of draft nuggets here, as we are just 3 days out from night number 1. We'll start with Darren Mougey. The biggest headline, the biggest storyline that actually came out of the Darren Mougey press conference wasn't something necessarily draft related. It actually had to do with the Jets picking up fifth-year options. Here was Darren Mougey on Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Jermaine Johnson's fifth-year options.
You made a decision on the fifth-year options for the 2022 first-round picks?
Yeah, we have time to make that decision, but I do anticipate exercising those fifth-year options on those players. Yeah.
So that was Mougey on the fifth-year options for those 3 guys. I'll just say this. It's crazy that we're already sitting here talking about the 2022 draft class, looking for second contract extensions, right? Or actually first contract, second contract now, first contract extensions, of course, with Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. And just the fact that we're talking about fifth-year options, it's crazy how the time has flown. It feels like just yesterday we were walking out of that first round with the Jets taking Sauce, Garrett, and Jermaine and thinking big, obviously big expectations for that class. And here we are 3 years later, entering year 4 with these guys, and we're already talking about contract extensions, fifth-year options. Crazy how the time has flown. I'll say this. I don't think this is much of a surprise, especially Sauce and Garrett Wilson. And from Jermaine Johnson's perspective, I don't think you'll see an extension this offseason before this season. and I think that's to be expected. This is a guy where his coaching staff's going to want to see what he can do coming off the torn Achilles. You pick up his 5th-year option, you buy yourself an extra year under contract after this season, and then you can kind of, give yourself some more time to potentially extend him next year in the near future. And I still think Sauce and Garrett Wilson will get contract extensions before the season. I think when we go out there week 1, whoever they're playing, Sauce and Garrett are going to be locked up long term. I think with everything going on with the draft and all the draft process, they're kind of waiting on it, getting through the draft, all the stuff that comes after the draft. And then once you kind of get that dead period between OTAs, mandatory minicamp, and training camp, that like 40-day dead period, that's kind of where I would target these Sauce and Garrett extensions to get done heading into the summer, entering training camp, and ultimately something finalized before the regular season. So no real surprise there, but that was definitely one of the bigger headlines to come out of this meeting. He also talked a little about the roster, how he feels it looks right now. He likes where it stands and how they can continue to add through the draft.
Going into this draft, you look at your roster currently. What do you view as the strengths of this team right now, and what do you want to come out of this draft saying, like, okay, we address this specifically?
Yeah, I feel good about where this roster's at right now in April. And I feel good about going into the draft and adding some good players that can help us win. And after the draft, it doesn't stop. We'll be scouring the street list for workouts, the alternative leagues, potential trades, and that it just never ends. But feel good about where the team's at now, and feel good about adding players that are going to help us in this draft.
It's a pivotal draft. Not only is it the first draft, but the Jets have also put themselves in a situation, this new regime, very early here, where they didn't do a whole lot in free agency, and it feels like their plan, their blueprint, at least this year, is build through the draft and supplement through free agency. That's at least the way it's headed. This is a team, your first 3 picks have got to be at least 3 starters, 3 guys that can contribute right away and make an impact on this team, because you have so many holes and you need guys to step in right away and fill these holes. And I'll even say that watch out for the Jets here potentially too. And you just even hear Mougey's answer there towards the end of maybe looking at the available free agents after the draft to see who's still available to pick some more guys up, make a couple more signings, depending on how the draft falls and who they add and who they like and all that stuff. Mougey kind of hints there, like maybe there's another free agent signing or 2 that we could see even after the draft, depending on how everything plays out. But it's huge. It's huge not only because it's their first draft, but of course because of all the holes that are on this team, right? There is talent. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of good pieces, no doubt about it. There's also a lot of areas this team's got to improve, and you've got to hit on the first round pick, of course, number 7, whether you move back, whatever, stay there, however that all plays out. Night number 1, hit on that pick. And in day 2, day 3, they've got to find talent, and they've got to find talent on offense too. I've talked about that a ton. This is a regime that is taking over for an old regime that could not find offensive talent in the middle rounds of draft. They could not find offensive linemen in the middle rounds. Joe Douglas started his tenure drafting Mekhi Becton. He was chasing that mistake his entire tenure to the point where his last first-round draft pick was Olu Fashanu. Started with a left tackle, ended with a left tackle, and everything in the middle of that was a complete train wreck at that position. So from Mougey's perspective, can't have that happen. Not with the left tackle. I'm talking about just in general. Find a day 1 legitimate starter that can be here long term, and then find middle round talent. Find guys on day 2 and day 3 that can contribute on defense as well, but especially offense. Because that previous regime couldn't find any of that. And if the Jets do put themselves in a position where they take Tyler Warren, you're going to have to find a right tackle in the middle of these rounds, which the Jets have not done a whole lot of. So a lot of pressure and a big opportunity for them to make a very big impact, first good impression on this fan base if they can hit on all 3 of these days. I'll also throw this one last clip out here, then we'll just talk about just some other things that Mougey had to say. This was Mougey, Costello asking him about the Rodgers comments.
And Aaron Rodgers went on Pat McAfee last week, and he described the meeting in February. He said he didn't really, there was an ample amount of respect in the meeting, said it lasted 15 minutes. Do you dispute his account of that meeting?
I understand the question, and I addressed that at the Combine. But today I just want to talk about the draft and Jets players.
Do you have any regrets from that meeting?
I understand the question, but I'm just going to talk about the draft and current Jets players.
No surprise that's the path Mougey took. I would assume if they ask Aaron Glenn, he's going to take the same path. We're going to talk about the draft, talk about guys on the roster. That's the right approach. No need to go back and forth with it. The meeting happened in February. It's over with. You move on. Justin Fields is your quarterback. And to kind of add on to that, he talked about Fields, continues to discuss how strongly they feel about Fields, and they have a ton of faith. I mean, he's the starter. They've named him the starter. They've said it. And I think that's pretty clear on why Fields wanted to come here. Is he wanted to go to a place where he had a legitimate chance to start and make an impact and get an opportunity to try and revitalize his career. And hopefully that happens here. But they continue to, Mougey said it today, continue to put their confidence out there and their vote of confidence into Justin Fields. Just some couple other things. Feels there was a great turnout so far at off-season workouts. We talked about Garrett Wilson and Sauce a couple days ago, both of those guys being there, even waiting on contract extensions. So that's been good to see. Those have been positive developments. And Mougey also said, he'll make calls to pretty much all 31 teams around the league about trading up, trading back, kind of doing your due diligence, if you will, to kind of get a gauge of where where things are at around the league. Jets want to move out, however that plays out. We'll see. Only time will tell. 3 days away from getting all of these answers, which cannot wait. We've been talking about it long enough. Finally get these answers. So that was Mougey earlier today out at One Jets Drive. Now, I wanted to get into Adam Schefter and an article that he released earlier today, basically with just some final draft nuggets, final draft notes heading into the draft here, and had some interesting stuff on the New York Jets, including two interesting developments, one involving Tyler Warren, which really wasn't reported until today, and in another on a potential surprise pick at number 7 if the Jets decide to go the defensive route. So we'll start here. Here is the article. Here's what he had to say. Schefter on the Jets, quote, "The Jets, who own the number 7 pick, have made a concerted effort to move in silence this offseason, as new head coach Aaron Glenn put it at last month's league meeting. There has been less talking out of their building as they begin to focus on how to turn around a team that went 5-12 last season. So what the Jets wind up doing this week is still the subject of speculation, shrouded in more secrecy than usual, but they did recently and quietly have Penn State's Tyler Warren in for a visit. And there are certain members of their organization who are said to be enamored with the player many consider to be the top tight end in this class. Warren also visited with the Giants the day after he worked out for the Jets. If the Jets target the other side of the ball, some people around the league believe Glenn could target a cornerback with Texas's Jahdae Brown as an option, or Jahdae Barron, rather, as an option. Glenn, of course, played cornerback in the NFL for 15 seasons. So that was Schefter on the Jets. I'll start with the Tyler Warren stuff, and then we'll get into Jahdae Barron and kind of what he brings to the table. And if it's realistic, if it makes sense, all that stuff. Tyler Warren's interesting because we've talked about Tyler Warren a ton. I'm not necessarily going to dive into Tyler Warren, the prospect. You guys know what Tyler Warren is as a prospect. Talked about him this morning on the mock draft. We've talked about him for months now. Him, Armand Membu, we know what they bring to the table. It feels like it's those two guys. We've talked about it. But it is interesting to know that he was in on a visit, and it kind of happened quietly. This is something that slipped, pretty much was under the rug. Like, nobody really knew about this until Schefter reported this earlier today, where a couple people in the building are enamored with him. They had a visit with him. They obviously have visited a couple other guys that we've known that they had a top 30 visit with. So we'll see if the Jets, however they want to play that out. Do you want to go tight end first round, address the offensive tackle, defensive tackle positions like that in the middle rounds? Or do you figure out your right tackle in the first round, take Membu, let's say, at number 7, get the offensive line complete, hopefully have your 2 bookend tackles in Olu and Membu for the next 10, 15 years, and then address tight end in what is a deep tight end class in the middle rounds, address defense in the middle rounds, and go about it that way. But it is intriguing. Hear the visit. A couple in the building are enamored. They really like him. Mougey and Glenn, they've worked in silence, so you really don't know what they're going to do. As Glenn mentioned, or as Schefter mentioned it certainly could be a surprise because a lot of players that we talked about the Jets potentially adding in free agency, that never happened. And they kind of went with a bunch of signings that nobody really saw coming. Could that be the case here in the draft where we all think it's going to be Membu, think it's going to be Warren, if Mason Graham falls, think it's going to be him, and it's not any of those guys, and they take a complete surprise pick? It's possible. As we continue to say, 3 days away, we'll finally get these answers and really get an idea of the Jets' path. So that kind of brings you now into the Jahdae Barron stuff, cornerback out of Texas, which a couple people have linked Barron to the Jets. Adam Schefter today and Albert Breer a few days ago as well wrote an article, had it on a podcast as well, talking about Barron to the Jets potentially being the pick there if the Jets decide to go defense, which is interesting because it feels like cornerback in the first round, just you don't love that idea. And I've said this many times. In my opinion, I don't love defense in general in the first round for the Jets. Even Mason Graham at 7, I can understand it if he falls. And I would say that just based off of what we're hearing, if Mason Graham fell to 7, I think there's a pretty good chance, even if Membu and Warren are there, that the Jets take Mason Graham. They met with him 3 separate times. I mean, this is a guy that they clearly love, clearly have a high level of interest in. I would be okay with Graham, but even then, I would prefer offense in round 1 because there's just so much help, so much holes that they need to fill. That's the way I approach it. But Jahdae Barron's an interesting prospect, and he is an intriguing prospect. It's just, you go out and sign Brandon Stevens. You give him a pretty hefty contract. You already have Sauce Gardner. You have Michael Carter already under contract. It just feels like corner not necessarily a big enough need for you to go out and take a guy at number 7 when defensive line is a bigger need if you want to target defense. Obviously, tight end, offensive line, even wide receiver, all much bigger needs than going out and taking a cornerback at number 7 and then putting yourself on a spot on day 2 and day 3 where you still need to fill all of those other holes, as opposed to filling one of those bigger holes on day number 1. So I just don't love this idea. Now, Jahdae Barron, the prospect, we can get into him now. Very intriguing and a very talented prospect. 5'11", 194 pounds, senior out of Texas. Spent all 5 seasons with the Texas Longhorns. And his background's just crazy. This guy is kind of the definition of just versatility. He was a 4-star recruit. He played wide receiver, defensive back, and punt returner in high school. He also ran track. And then he began his Texas career at safety. And then he moved to nickel in 2023 and then played outside as a wide cornerback in 2024. This guy does a little bit of everything. He can play safety. He can play nickel. He can play outside. He can do essentially anything you want him to do in the secondary. He did at a major program in the SEC last year for Texas and did it in a very big, very productive, very successful season for Barron. You look at his numbers last year: 67 tackles, 11 passes defended, 5 interceptions, 3 tackles for loss. 11 passes defended were a career high, and his 5 interceptions were also a career high. He also led the SEC in interceptions with those 5 last year, so it was atop the conference. His career stats: played 57 games, 226 total tackles, 24 passes defended, 8 interceptions, 21 tackles for loss. Some of the strengths, talked about it: versatility, can play anywhere, safety, nickel, outside, whatever you want, he's going to do it. And to be honest, he plays all 3 very well. Oftentimes you'll get guys that are versatile that are kind of can play three positions, but are kind of like average at all of them. Barron's a guy that can play three positions. You watch him at all three of those positions separately, and he plays all three of those positions like they are his main number one spot. And very good at all three. Does very well. A lot of strengths. Good at tackling, run defense, very good in zone. He is a guy that's going to make plays in zone coverage, and specifically in cover three and quarter heavy schemes. That's where he thrives. You saw that at Texas. Very athletic, competitive, tough. Just some of those other traits that I think a Glenn guy would probably hold. Competitive, tough, physical, athletic. Those type of guys it feels like are an Aaron Glenn type of prospect. Playing a position, playing in the secondary. Of course, that Aaron Glenn played. Weaknesses can get handsy sometimes. And while he was a track star and he is got some speed, his long speed doesn't pop off the charts as you maybe think it would. But versatile, very good prospect. And that's what I would say with this. Jahdae Barron is a great prospect outside of Travis Hunter, right? Hunter really ranked as, the number one prospect and obviously amongst many number one cornerback. But a lot of people rank Barron over Will Johnson, arguably the best cornerback in this draft. Rankings-wise, very good. Brings a lot of great traits. The versatility is huge. And especially to play in a conference and at a school like that, be that versatile and be that successful, it's a big deal. And produce, right? His production. 5 picks last year, 11 passes defended, both career highs. The 5 picks were, led the conference, does a lot of good things. It just doesn't make sense in number 7. I talked about this a couple days ago. The idea of taking Ashton Genty, right, and trading Breece Hall. Some people have kind of gotten onto that train. Like if the Jets would have traded Breece, that doesn't make sense to me. Running back's not a huge need for the Jets. Why take Genty and then still have tackle, tight end, heck, defensive line, all still be a hole going into day 2 and day 3? Like that just doesn't make any sense. If there was a glaring need at cornerback, yeah, I'd say, okay, you can understand Barron. I don't love the idea of taking a defensive player at number 7, period. Especially a cornerback, though. Just doesn't make sense. Unless if your plan is move Stevens to safety, have him slot in. It doesn't seem like that's the case, though. I mean, unless if they love his versatility enough where they think they can move him around. But I don't know. I just think this team's got bigger holes to fill. Cornerback not being one of them. And I think you can find a day 2, day 3 safety that can fit this defense and come in and compete and be a solid contributor. I don't think there's any need to use a premium pick on a corner. Yeah, you can make the case just to defend defensive player in general. I'd be okay with Mason Graham. I'd still prefer offense, though, over him. I've said that many times. So great prospect, but Jets have bigger holes, in my opinion. Membu, Warren should be the priorities there. So that's my take. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts? You believe in a potential surprise pick at number 7 for the Jets? I'll also throw this out there as well. In a world where the Jets trade back, Schefter also noted in this article, which I thought was interesting. Not a Jets-related note, but it could affect the Jets. And that is the Broncos. He said, talking to league sources, not many teams are really open to trading up. It doesn't feel like. But the Broncos are one of the only teams that he's heard have made an effort and want to trade up, could potentially want to trade up. I think a lot of that has to do with how far Genty falls, where Genty ends up going, like where Denver would want to move up for Genty if he's still available. Let's say he gets past the Raiders at 6, whatever. But Mougey, the Denver background, obviously Sean Payton, Glenn, a lot of connections between Denver and the Jets. Could there be a position where the Jets can move back with Denver? You're moving back 13 spots all the way to pick 20. They can maybe bag a first-round pick next year with that, moving that far back. So it'll be interesting to see if that's something the Jets do. But I thought that was also an interesting nugget. In a world where the Jets do trade back, not many teams want to trade up, it seems. Denver could be one of those only teams. Could there be a situation where the Jets and Denver move back? If Genty falls past the Raiders and Denver loves him that much and wants to move up to 7, so they can jump the Bears and teams like that from getting him, could be something to look for. We'll see. But I thought that was interesting and wanted to bring that up as well for the trade back crowd, which I know some Jet fans would like to see them move out of it. As always, though, it's easier said than done. We could always say trade back. That's great. You got to find a team that's willing to move up. And obviously, you got to meet on the right price. So that'll do it. That'll now officially do it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below about Darren Mougey's comments earlier today, your biggest takeaways, and your thoughts on these two nuggets from Adam Schefter. Tyler Warren, visit with the Jets, few in the organization enamored with him, and your thoughts on Jahdae Barron. Realistic, unrealistic, like the pick, don't like the pick. Your thoughts there on a potential surprise pick for the Jets at number 7. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Talk to you soon. Until next time, Jets, Jets.